Hey guys, welcome back. This is a story about what if Naruto befriended Kurama early. After a life-changing event, Naruto meets Kurama early and they become partners and even good friends with a better outlook on life. He meets many who want to join him and help achieve their dreams and goals together. Among those friends are many beautiful women. Realize just how important he is to them. Before we start, thank you for all of the support. It really means a lot to me. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and leave a like. You can suggest a Naruto fanfiction with a link in the comments if you want me to read it, and check the description for the creator of this great fanfic and support them for making this fanfic. So let's start. Warning. This story will contain mature language, sexual themes, and graphic depictions of violence and gore. Disclaimer. I do not own Naruto or any of its characters. Chapter 6. Training Montage Part 1. In Naruto's new and improved mindscape, it was hours after Kurama told Naruto all she knew about his parents, and the young blonde was now lying on his back in the grass with a very contented smile. He finally heard actual facts about his parents, and he was only too happy to know who they were after years of nothing. They were more incredible than he could have ever imagined, and he was extremely proud to have been born from them. Kurama had taken a quick nap nearby on the soft grass while the blonde was deep in his thoughts. She just woke and now just truly realized that she had much more space and freedom compared to that dark and wet room she was trapped in for years, not to mention being strapped to a large floating rock in Kushina's seal before that. Delighted with that notion, she rolled over on her back and began rubbing her back and face against the tall grass like a cat would, her tail sweeping around lazily. Naruto, hearing the commotion, raised his head to see what his tenant was doing and had to chuckle softly. Kurama stopped to open one eye to glare at him. After a moment of staring, she just grunted dismissively and continued her rubbing. Don't worry. I'm not gonna tell anyone out there what you do in here. It's not like they'll believe me that the great Kyuubi no Kitsune enjoys frolicking around in the grass like a regular fox. He teased with a smirk, as if reading her mind this time. That goes without saying. Just remember, I know everything you think and say. Kurama grunted as she lazily rolled back over on her stomach. She stretched all four limbs, opened her jaw wide to the point of almost unhinging in a massive yawn that actually shook the landscape, and had all of her large and long tails spread out into the sky like a fan behind her in an impressive showcase of her massive size. Her container had to watch in silent awe, wondering just how she was sealed into someone as small as him. Phew, that felt good to do after so long in that cramped space. Oi, I feel like clearing my throat, so I'm going to show you something that you will be able to do if I train you long enough. Get ready to duck for cover. Kurama spoke in a mischievous tone. Wait a minute, clearing throat. Why do I have to do? Oh, hell. Naruto trailed off in alarm as he watched the massive fox point her muzzle up into the air and her tails curved over her head. Just above her open mouth. He felt the air around him getting heavier and his entire body felt like it was vibrating intensely from the sheer power emitted by the large fox. He saw what looked like a large mixture of dark red and light blue blobs of chakra appear out of thin air that began converging toward the space Kurama's tails were curved around. He knew this was big trouble and dashed for cover behind a nearby large tree. Oi! What the hell are you trying, damn fox? He shouted over his shoulder as he dove behind the trunk. Kurama didn't pay him any mind as she concentrated. After a few long seconds of charging, a giant ball of raw and sinisterly red chakra was now floating above her head. When it stopped gathering, Naruto could see the ball begin to shrink with a loud rumble. It kept compressing and it was getting darker and denser as it shrank in size until it reached 1/10 of the size it was before. He was flabbergasted when Kurama opened her mouth wide and snapped it closed around the ball before visibly swallowing. He then watched as the giant fox hunkered down on all fours, as if she was a lion ready to pounce. His eyes widened when her neck and cheeks began to visibly balloon out as if she was holding in a massive breath of air. The fox then opened her mouth slightly with smoke slowly wisping out of it, followed by a slight twitch of her body forward, and that was when all went to hell for Naruto. Kurama spat the chakra ball from her mouth with monstrous force, feeling and sounding like a giant cannon shot. The force from the expulsion immediately tore up a large portion of land in front of her. It also rattled every bone in Naruto's body as he tried desperately to watch through the blinding flash of the chakra ball leaving the fox's mouth at incredible speed. It wasn't too hard for him to follow it as the speeding chakra ball mercilessly gorged the ground underneath it due to its incredible power and speed. The boy watched in amazement as the chakra ball continued on its destructive path unimpeded until it finally disappeared into the distant horizon toward the wide and empty expanses of the plane that he created. Whoa, what the hell was all Naruto got out as he was interrupted when the empty plane lit up in a blinding white flash of light from the chakra ball's explosion that engulfed a good portion of it in a quickly expanding dome of raw energy and raging flame. A massive shockwave followed, crashing through Kurama and Naruto. It nearly blew the small human away despite his cover, but the large fox was unconcerned, as if it was just some gust of wind ruffling her fur. The energy and flame dissipated as quickly as it appeared, and all that was left was sullen silence and the sight of a huge mushroom cloud of smoke billowing high into the sky in the distance. Oh my Kami, I can't believe this. How is this possible? That'll destroy an entire village in one hit. Naruto murmured in wide-eyed alarm at this sight after he slowly got out from behind cover. He shot a quick look over at the towering figure of Kurama, and she seemed bored as she cracked her neck as if to work out a small crick. A cold shiver went down the boy's spine as he seemed to have finally realized for the first time since meeting her that he just saw a small portion of what the most powerful entity in the world, currently sealed inside his own body, was truly capable of. Just how the hell did Dad manage to seal you into me? You're way too strong, he blurted out in disbelief as he slowly walked up next to the giant fox sitting on her haunches. Kurama glanced down at the blonde boy still staring in amazement at the plume of smoke. As much as I hate to admit this, but, despite all of my power, your father only needed a combination of smarts, techniques, and timing to hold me down long enough for the sealing. I tried to destroy your village with this very technique while I was under that man's control, but the fourth used his teleportation technique to simply send it where there was no danger. Kurama admitted with some annoyance at remembering her strongest technique being deflected so easily. She sighed and continued. Absolute and overwhelming power is not the answer to every battle. That's why, even if you could do this with training, I do not recommend using it all the time unless absolutely necessary or you know it would be to your advantage. You should only use this as a last resort, or if you're matched up against another Jinchuriki. Naruto whipped his head up at her in surprise. There are others like me. Exclamation mark quote. I have 8 so-called siblings, and they're all likely sealed into humans as well. I'm the strongest since I have the highest number of tails among the 9 of us. However, the others are no pushovers and should not be taken lightly. She warned as she glanced down at her small host. I remember that your father had a conversation with my previous container about a Kumo nin he encountered in battle during the Third Great War. He spoke of that nin as having the ability to transform any part of his body into a giant octopus-like tentacle. I'm willing to bet that human is the Jinchuriki for the 8-tailed beast, or Hachibi. If he's able to transform like that, he likely attained a full merger with his Biju like we are trying to achieve. If you encounter that Kumo nin in battle in the future, I'll likely suggest immediate retreat. Unless you have full control of my power, you will not beat him. Is that understood? Naruto gulped loudly and nodded. For the all-powerful Kyuubi to stress about retreating, this Jinchuriki definitely was serious business. How long do you think it's gonna take for me to be able to use your power, Kurama? He inquired. The fox thought deeply for a moment. To be honest, I do not know. Your chakra coils need to grow and expand to be able to handle the influx of my chakra with yours. The more your coils develop, the more of my power you're able to handle without exploding. Not only that, my chakra is fueled by the residual malice of mankind. If you aren't used to it, the chakra will try to drive you berserk with its negative nature and you may go out of control, even with your comrades nearby. She warned bluntly. She knew it would do no good to keep quiet about the negatives of trying to attain full transformation, so she might as well throw it out there now. Normally, I'd say it will take 20 years for you to develop well enough to attain the full 100% of my power. However, I have noticed lately your body has an incredible capacity for quick adaptability. Probably thanks to the elite blood of the 2 clans you were born from. I would not be surprised if you did it in 10 years instead. Naruto nodded his understanding, before something she said hit him. Wait, you said I was born from 2 clans, and I know about the Namikaze. It was a minor clan and it had no Kekkei Genkai, but it produced powerful shinobi constantly. It just was unlucky enough to die out over the years, leaving my dad as the last one before me. Are you saying the Uzumaki clan exists? He exclaimed in surprise with a bit of hope seeping into his tone. Existed. The fox corrected, making him look up at her in confusion and some disappointment. She sighed, not wanting to show him this memory, but she figured it'd answer quite a few questions in one go. A picture was worth 1,000 words after all. She snapped her fingers, making what looked like a large holographic screen pop into existence in front of Naruto. This is the last sight your mother saw of her homeland. A picture flickered into sight on the screen, displaying a gorgeous and mountainous island as seen from a beach across the sea surrounding it. However, it was marred by plumes of smoke peppering what was apparently a beautiful and prosperous village sitting in the center of it, now empty and destroyed with most of its buildings demolished. He gasped and stared, transfixed by what he saw. He knew and felt it with every fiber of his being that this was his ancestral home, and seeing it so devastated made his heart clench painfully. The Uzumaki clan was so powerful and large that it formed its own village, Uzushiogakure, in the center of the land of whirlpools off the sea coast to the east of here. It was located between what you humans call Land of Water and Land of Waves. The village was a close ally to Konohagakure because of Uzumaki Mito, who was practically a royalty of Uzushio, marrying Senju Hashirama, the first Hokage. What happened to us? Naruto whispered as he continued to stare at the image, feeling his eyes become watery at this sight. He could only imagine the grief his mother was feeling seeing this in person. Your clan was so formidable, with its own brand of special abilities, that people spoke of the Uzumaki in the same breath as the Senju and Uchiha back then. Unfortunately, while the abilities of the Senju and Uchiha could be beaten and bypassed, the Uzumaki clan's special talent in Fuinjutsu, or the art of sealing, was deemed virtually unbeatable. One seal master specially trained by the Uzumaki could easily take on an entire platoon of Junin if he had half a minute to prepare. And that's if he was having a bad day. Naruto's eyes widened. So the others feared us. Right. Just before the Second Great Shinobi War, the villages of Iwa, Kiri, and Kumo formed a secret alliance to swiftly destroy Uzushio in one night, and they were going to march onto Konoha in a surprise invasion before any news could reach here about the destruction and the coming enemy. They were intending to wipe Konoha off the map with a quick offensive. They might have succeeded if they hadn't made a fatal miscalculation. Naruto frowned. Wait a minute. I read about that war recently, and the biggest names were Konoha, Aim, and Suna. The three you mentioned barely did anything. Kurama's teeth bared in a truly malicious grin as she chuckled sadistically. You'd be proud of your ancestors. At least 70% of each of the three villages' military formed a large invasion force at least 40,000 strong against Uzushiogakure's 4,000s. They believed that was enough to overwhelm Konoha afterward. The blonde growled at such a lopsided number. After all was said and done, Uzushiogakure was destroyed and its few remaining members were scattered into the wind. The invasion force, hee-hee-ha-ha-ha. The fox had to stop here because she was laughing uproariously, as if enjoying such a sweet memory. Naruto sweet-dropped, not surprised his new partner apparently found large-scale destruction amusing. It took a moment for Kurama to calm down. They were cut down to only 5,000. Naruto's jaw dropped. While he was pissed that his clan was destroyed over such a stupid reason, he had to admit that was damn awesome. To make it worse for the invading villages, they never gained anything of value from Uzushiokagure. While your kin were dying or about to be captured, they activated trap seals that destroyed their enemies in their deaths. Whatever were valuable to the clan were sealed away in impassable vaults that only those of Uzumaki descent could open. Even housewives and children about to be captured for breeding sacrificed themselves in kamikaze attacks using seals, taking their potential captors with them. The invaders greatly underestimated just how far the Uzumaki clan would go to make them pay for stepping even a single centimeter into their home. What was supposed to be one night of a quick mission became 3 days of hell the survivors would do anything to forget for the rest of their lives. Kurama finished softly, a stark difference from when she was laughing earlier. Naruto was in complete awe of how his ancestors refused to back down in face of such overwhelming odds. The remaining invading force were woefully unprepared to face the angry reinforcement group that arrived from Konoha. It was the first and only time your mother, who just became genin at the time, drew upon my power in rage, and she used it in combination with her chakra chains to slaughter hundreds. She took no prisoner and did not regret one moment of it, I'll tell you that much. Naruto nodded, he'd have done the same. Despite the destruction of Uzushio, the incident single-handedly helped change the composition of the entire Great War. Instead of Iwa, Kiri, and Kumo marching on Konoha with little resistance, they turned tails and retreated into their countries to lick their wounds. The only reason the war even occurred was because Suna and Aim tried to invade several of the minor countries in the confusion in order to gain more resources. Konoha had to defend their interests. Despite that, it was still the shortest Great War out of the three so far, and Konoha came out of it with minimal loss, the legendary Sannin, and a solid alliance with Suna. Kurama exhaled, apparently done with her long lecture. She then jerked her head at the screen still showing the destroyed Uzukage. Compared to the Uchiha, a clan of thieves and power-hungry mongrels, I actually respect the Uzumaki for its strength and wisdom that it earns through hard work. Its focus on family and comradeship was second to none as well. Because of their ultimate sacrifice, Konoha still stands today, and its shinobi force proudly display the Uzumaki spiral on their outfits to honor Uzushiogakure. Naruto smiled softly while he walked up to the floating screen and reached a hand out, as if he was hoping to touch his ancestral home for real. Did Mom ever go in there after? No. She was too grief-stricken. She asked the old fart to seal off its access, and no one were allowed in except for any other stray Uzumaki. Not like anyone else could sneak in anyway, since the trap seals left behind by the dying defenders made this entire island an impenetrable vault now. No one can get in or out. Then it's up to me. I need to see what's there, I need to learn more about my mother's clan and sealing. That's my duty as her son and as an Uzumaki. He declared quietly as he clenched his outstretched hand, as if grasping his clan's past. Kurama grinned. The secrets you may learn there will certainly help in our quest to eliminate that masked bastard, so I have no objection to this. We'll have to wait a while though, because the old fart likely will not allow us to go there now until we're sufficiently strong enough. Naruto put on an impatient frown, but had to nod in agreement. I'll have to somehow learn the basics of sealing around here anyway. I'll help you with some aspects of it. I didn't spend all the time in Mito and your mother without seeing some of their fuinjutsu skills in action, but you're going to have to find a seal master to truly understand the art. Something to think about another time. He replied with a shrug. With that out of the way, it's time we figure out your taijutsu and kenjutsu styles soon. The sooner you get started on learning these styles, the faster you will rise in power when you complement these styles with jutsu and other techniques you will learn later down the road. The fox suggested as Naruto sat down into an attentive sitting position, ready to absorb all his teacher would suggest. I believe I know the perfect taijutsu style for you, and I actually developed it. It's called the Raging Fox. You will be using my power in the future, and this style is the best way to augment it in order to quickly destroy enemies in front of you. Even without the power, you will most likely overwhelm most opponents with its unpredictable nature and agility. It's also not a very rigid style, so it's easy to flow from a strike into another, which would keep your opponents from being able to easily guess your pattern. Its only major drawback is that it lacks decent defense. You'll use your reflexes to avoid most strikes, but you may take some damage if you get too aggressive and the opponent's good. Fortunately for us, my chakra will be useful in keeping you from being injured too badly. Kurama explained. Naruto's eyes began to get wider and wider as the fox explained the style's benefits and drawbacks. Sounds like a great style. And the nice thing is that no one else would know anything about this and it'll throw everyone off. Please teach me, sensei. You'll spend time here learning the stances from me, and you will need to practice them outside the mindscape since muscle memory is very important for learning martial arts and you can't develop it in your own mind. Same goes for any kenjutsu style as well. Kurama pointed out. This still didn't put a damper on Naruto's excitement. In fact, it only made him more determined. What about the kenjutsu style? Do you have any recommendation? I don't personally care for kenjutsu, but I have seen many styles in my long life. I will show you the memories of all the top weapon users I have seen until you feel a connection with a style you can start out with, and we will develop a training regimen for that. So how will I train here? No offense, but you're super huge and I'll get squashed if I even tried to spar with you. Naruto pointed out with a sheepish chuckle. Kurama grinned toothily. When you linked your senses with mine, I gained a small degree of control over this mindscape. Just enough to form something like this. She stated as she seemed to concentrate a little. Wisps of smoke formed out of thin air and converged on a spot next to Naruto. He was quite surprised to see a human form out of the whirling smoke. This somewhat muscular human turned out to be a very plain and unassuming brown-haired man in dull gray clothing, someone one would easily lose in a crowd. The man had on a blank expression and he did not seem to pay any notice to a giant fox behind him or the surprised little boy sitting in front of him. He had the feeling of a puppet being controlled by an invisible force. I can infuse it with my knowledge of any particular style and set this apparition upon you to train you in that style. Kurama explained as her creation suddenly moved into an odd stance of getting on all fours. Before Naruto could react, the man pounced toward the boy, hands out like claws, even the fingernails looked sharpened. He yelped in surprise and fell back onto the grass just as the apparition disappeared when it was about to land a deadly strike. Kurama chuckled lightly before wagging her index finger in the air. You're not ready yet for either style. First we have to finish your conditioning, then we will start work on developing your body specifically to use Raging Fox effectively in battle. After about 6 months of adapting your body to Raging Fox, we will begin on the Kenjutsu style you pick, just remember it has to augment your taijutsu. Raging Fox will be aggressive, wild, and unpredictable, just like how your personality is. Keep that in mind while we search my memories for the style that fits you, okay? Before we forget, you also will need to learn to mold chakra during all of this. You will be doing chakra control exercises to improve your chakra efficiency and be able to use more jutsu in one sitting. Naruto nodded, his eyes looking serious, but he was totally excited on the inside. He just knew he was going to get so strong with his partner's help. Alright, it's time for you to get out of here. You have been sitting out there in the middle of the clearing for around 3 hours now. The fox suggested. Naruto quickly nodded and gave a wave as he faded out. Kurama smirked before glancing over at the ruined landscape she caused with her attack. A sweat drop formed over her head. Maybe I should have asked that boy to restore this before he left, oh well. 2 weeks later, back at the 42nd training ground. Oi, please tell me you're kidding me, Kurama. Naruto pleaded of his tenant as he stood at the edge of a large and deep ravine next to the training ground. It looked truly menacing and he seriously believed was going to die if he slipped and fell from here. I'm not. Now that you're done with your conditioning, we are now training to use all the muscles you would need for Raging Fox. A major part of that style is the ability to feint and move in unpredictable patterns around an opponent. You need strong limbs able to latch onto most surfaces and bounce off in the same instant. So, in addition to your usual workouts, you will be climbing down to the bottom of this ravine and back up several times, not just facing up, but also facing left, right, and down at random intervals. You will need to get used to the effect gravity will have on your body from any direction. Now get your ass down there. Kurama ordered with a tone that didn't allow any talk back. Naruto gulped and began slowly easing himself over the edge. Dadan promptly yelped in surprise as he slipped off with no warning. It was only by luck he managed to grab onto a thin ledge below him before he fell any farther into the 300-meter deep ravine. Oi! Are you trying to have me killed? He shouted out loud as he managed to pull himself up by just his fingers onto the ledge. I don't mind having you suffer a little, but remember, you die, I die. So I wouldn't have you do this if I wasn't sure about your survivability. Please do not betray my faith in you. Kurama said coolly. Yeah, I'm getting that warm and fuzzy feeling from you, damn fox. Naruto's tone was dripping with sarcasm as he precariously climbed down to the next ledge. Oh, and to master this level, you must be able to make it to the bottom and back up in under 10 minutes each time, in whatever direction I tell you to face as you climb. We will keep this up until you can do it 10 times in a row, then we'll move on to the next level. The fox amusedly added on at the end, enjoying seeing her container's face begin to form tick marks. Damn you, fox, was heard echoing from a lonely ravine in the middle of a forest outside Konohagakure. 1 month later, same place Naruto was resting on his backside at the top of the ravine, panting heavily. He thought it was impossible, but he managed to climb down to the bottom and back up in under 10 minutes, in any direction he faced, more than 10 times in a row. He had just established a new personal best of 6 minutes and 20 seconds. How's that? I can do this in my sleep now. I beat your not so subtle attempts at killing me. Do your worst, damn fox, he yelled victoriously in his mind. His exuberant mood quickly disappeared as an odd and knowing chuckling from his tenant unnerved him. Did I say we'd be done with this? We only got you up to a passable enough level to begin practicing the kata of Raging Fox effectively. You still need a lot more work to make this style fast and deadly. You only completed the first level, boy. Kurama ominously stated with an evil smirk. Oh Kami, there's more of this. You know how many times I nearly died doing this, because you were there for every damn time. The boy pleaded with the fox, hoping for some mercy. It gets easier, maybe. She innocently added the last word as Naruto frowned in annoyance. First, we need something from that old fart. We'll move on to the next level tomorrow. We have already discussed the basics of this style, but tonight you will start learning the kata for real, both on feet and on all fours. Let's have some fun for now, though. Try jumping as high as you can into those trees. The blonde raised an eyebrow. He certainly did feel stronger and more agile, but did he really improve that much? Only one way to find out. He quickly got up and ran toward the treeline into the forest beyond. As he neared, he jumped as hard as he could, and was promptly shocked to find himself high in the air and zipping straight at a tree trunk. Instinctively, he twisted his body just in time to latch onto it lightly with all fours before instantly jumping off again toward another trunk. He repeated this several times, marveling at how easy it was to do this, before he finally grabbed onto a high tree branch and flipped under and up to land on it smoothly. Wow! Now I can easily jump around like these veteran nin, he excitedly exclaimed out loud as he jumped forward to continue doing another series of acrobatics deeper into the forest. Kurama had to admit she was enjoying her container's exhilaration over this. Now this should motivate him more. He'll still hate me tomorrow, though. She smirked, before sensing something far off in the distance to the right through this thick forest. Oi, Naruto. Mind going toward your right for a while? I sense something in that direction. The fox requested of her tenant, who nodded. He figured it made for a nice break after the past month of nothing but climbing and exercises. He shot off in that direction, making use of his body's newfound agility to effortlessly skim across the branches high up in the trees. It wasn't long before the boy was surprised when the trees suddenly disappeared as he jumped into a wide open space and landed roughly on the ground, tumbling a few times. Whoops, gotta be prepared for that kind of thing, he murmured to himself as he quickly got up and lightly dusted off his clothes. He glanced around to see a large clearing between the forest he was in and the next one. However, this forest had an ominous feeling and the trees were much bigger, darker, and taller than the ones he had been jumping on. He couldn't see deep into the dark and foreboding forest. The sinister atmosphere was made more threatening by the presence of a tall metal chain link fence wrapping all the way around the forest as far as the boy could see from where he was standing. It had signs that called this the 44th training ground and they were barring entry due to the dangers inside. He saw some graffiti on one of the signs that read, Forest of Death. That shiver going down his spine was made all the worse as he felt the fox inside him smirk mischievously. Oi, I can feel your evil smile. What the hell are you thinking? Naruto nervously asked of his merciless sensei. Nothing, just thinking we found a good place to train your battle sense and help prepare you to take lives. I can sense all kinds of wildlife inside this forest that would be out for your blood as soon as you set a foot in there. She replied almost too excitedly. So extreme rock climbing wasn't enough for you. Now, you're trying to have me killed by going in there and face Kami knows what. Naruto yelled out loud in angst, his voice echoing all around him. His answer was a chorus of growls and roars emitting from inside the dark forest. Oh yeah, I'll destroy all of you, bastards, he yelled flippantly as he flipped both of his middle fingers at the forest. Kurama chuckled amusedly at the boy's antics. We won't be coming back here for a long while. I'm just filing this location away until we get you up to a good enough level to survive anything in there. She mused as the blonde turned around to head back into the forest he was in. So I'll be spending some time in there. You said something about battle senses and taking lives. Aren't they just animals? Granted, they sound incredibly vicious and violent, but they're not humans. Naruto pointed out to his tenant as he began tree hopping back to the 42nd. You can spend all of your time training for your first encounter with a human and you will not if will still freeze up due to inexperience. A beast out for your head is about the same as a human going after you, because in the end, it's either kill or be killed. Going in there will not only help tune up your training, it will improve your survival instincts and ease your nerves when facing humans for the first time later on. The fox reasoned, and he had to admit she was right. He wasn't going to like the idea of killing, but as long as he understood it was to protect his precious ones, he would do it. Later in the Hokage's office, the Hokage was sitting at his desk still wrangling with his worst enemy, the paperwork, when Naruto quietly entered the office. Hokage Jiji. I'm here to report my training so far and the fox said to get something from you. He declared as he walked up to the Hokage's desk. The third put a hand up for patience as he finished the paper he was working on. The boy respectfully complied. After a moment, Hiruzen finally looked up at the blonde boy and smiled gently. Ah, Naruto-kun. It's hard to believe it's been already 2 months since you began training with the Kyuubi. How is that going? The old man inquired as he carefully checked Naruto's body from where he sat, impressed with the boy's physical condition. There seemed to be almost no wasted muscle anywhere. All the muscles that developed were the ones needed for the styles this boy was learning. He hated to admit it, but the Kyuubi made for a good teacher. It's going great. Despite the fox's attempts to kill me by dropping me into a ravine, I endured and I'm feeling really good. I can jump through forests like most of the veteran shinobi I see, I'm feeling really fast and strong, and I'm now starting to learn my taijutsu style. I also began to mold my chakra, but I haven't done anything with it yet. Naruto reported on his progress. The third was impressed with this young boy, who had already begun to mold chakra a year ahead of most of the children. Would you mind molding as much as possible? I'd like to see what level your reserves are at. He kindly requested of the boy. The blonde nodded and put his hands up in a ram seal. After a moment of concentrating, the Hokage could feel a massive amount of energy radiating from this young boy. He also felt some of the Anbu guards shifting slightly uncomfortably in their hiding spots. Amazing, this is already high Chunin level. He could be high Junin, or even Kage level, by the time he's in his teens. This is just with your chakra, correct? He tried to confirm, discreetly asking if the Kyuubi was somewhat responsible. Naruto caught the meaning as he dropped the molding. Yeah, it's all mine. He affirmed with a proud smirk. The Hokage could tell the boy was looking forward to seeing just how strong he would become in the future. I have to admit I am very impressed with this amount of chakra for your young age. However, I should warn you that it would be difficult to efficiently control your chakra at that level now. At this point, you may not be able to effectively use medical ninjutsu or genjutsu since they both require very fine chakra control. Even some low-level jutsu might be out of your reach now since they can only be used with small amounts of chakra. The Hokage said, much to the boy's annoyance at having some of his possible potential impeded by his own traits. In addition to being proficient enough in knowledge, taijutsu, and throwing, you are required to know 3 specific low-level jutsu to graduate from the academy. Henjin Kawarimi shouldn't be any trouble after some practice, but I am particularly worried about Bunshin. Know any of these jutsu? I wouldn't mind practicing them on my own time. Naruto asked inwardly. Yes. They're very simple. The old fart is right about Bunshin, though. I can already tell it will be impossible to use that jutsu for you with your insane amount of chakra. Unless you have been doing chakra control since you were born, you won't be able to succeed with your huge chakra reserves. The same goes for medical jutsu and genjutsu. They're out too. I will teach you a substitute for Bunshin and it's infinitely more useful. We will wait on that until you begin classes, though. Right now, all you need is to work on your taijutsu, kenjutsu, and chakra control. It's so we can build very solid foundations right now before we move on. Kurama lectured. I assume the Kyuubi knows these jutsu and you were discussing them with her. The third inquired curiously as he noticed the boy's expression change slightly while remaining silent. Yep. She just told me she knows Bunshin is impossible for me. I'll have to take her word on that, her being linked to me ever since I was born and all that. Naruto replied with a shrug. That's unfortunate. There are other variations to the Bunshin technique, however. You should be able to pass with any of these. It's just a matter of figuring out which one suits you. Yeah, she said she knows a substitute and will teach me that when the academy starts. She won't tell me any more than that, though. The old man nodded, satisfied the boy would have a solution. That's all I got to say about what I've been doing. The fox also told me to come by here and pick up something to continue my training in the ravine. The blonde added. The third raised an eyebrow. This boy already reached that level in just 1 month. He thought as he stood up from the desk and moved over to a cabinet. He opened it up and took out several odd-looking straps and a vest. This is for you, Naruto-kun. I have to say the Kyuubi knows what she's doing with you. This is an old-fashioned method but it works. He commented as he handed the equipment to the boy, who grunted as he struggled to hoist the deceptively heavy equipment over his shoulder. What are these for? He asked quizzically as he looked over the equipment with curiosity. These, Naruto-kun, are what you will be wearing as you continue your training in the ravine. You put the vest on and the straps on your wrists and ankles, then you add chakra to the chakra weights inside these to get heavier depending on how much you add. The Hokage explained. He had to hold back an amused chuckle as he watched a look of horror start to creep on the small boy's face before he slumped his shoulders, his face downcast. Both of you are trying to kill me, who's next? Hinata-chan, he murmured dejectedly. Later this evening at Naruto's apartment. Why did I have to say that? He cried inwardly while one of his eyes was twitching as he stared with barely restrained horror down at a bento full of mysterious substances sitting on his dining table. He swore he saw something alive twitching in the dark and murky fluid and the smell was simply too much for his sensitive nose. He had to subtly breathe through his mouth, which wasn't much better as he could almost taste the odor anyway. He had to make some effort to move his eyes away from this dangerous box to the one person who brought it here, the familiar indigo-haired girl named Hyuga Hinata. She was sitting by his side, poking her 2 index fingers together nervously. If it's okay with you, please try it. It's my first time cooking anything, she said softly with a blush. Naruto gulped and wondered where he went wrong in becoming friends with the young Hyuga. Since they met, they have been spending at least a few hours a week playing together and hanging out, mostly with Hanabi tagging along as well too. They even sparred lightly once in a while. It was a good relationship and he just recently introduced her to Ino, Shikamaru, and Choji. She got along well with all of them, especially Ino. Lately she was allowed to come over to his apartment to play and talk once in a while, giving her a chance to get away from the scrutiny of her clan. Now he wondered what he did wrong to have 3 people try to kill him this day, even if only one of them was doing it willingly. Kurama snorted in mock offense at that thought. Hinata-chan, not that I don't appreciate this, but I'm wondering why your dad didn't get to be your first taster. Naruto carefully asked of his would-be murderer as he kept an alert eye on the gurgling bento box for any possible attack. Hinata allowed a surprised expression before looking thoughtful. I did actually ask father to try this first, but he said that he had eaten and felt you would appreciate it. He then suggested that I bring it over here. She explained with an expectant smile, her lavender-tinted eyes shining with innocence. Naruto inwardly sighed in annoyance at the fact that Hiashi just blatantly passed the buck onto him. Hiashi, I'm going to reiterate that you are a vicious, evil, and sadistic bastard, and I'm going to find a way to get you back for this someday, he vowed. Kurama just chuckled amusedly. You might as well tell her no. Better to hurt her feelings a little and offer suggestions of improvement than to actually die of poisoning from this. She suggested. Naruto tried to look into Hinata's innocent eyes and promptly lost his resolve to refuse this meal. I can't do it. I learned it's important for a guy to appreciate a girl's cooking, no matter how bad it is. He promised in his head before picking up a pair of chopsticks and dunked them into the foreign substance. He shivered in revulsion when the chopsticks encountered resistance going in, as if it was actually more of a slimy substance than liquid. He pulled a piece of something out of the bento with a horrible slurping sound as it had to be literally tugged out of the brown slime's rather strong grip. Oi, you're seriously not going to do this, are you? Don't believe the crappy mangas you read in the library about having to eat a female's cooking no matter what. There's no guarantee I could keep you alive with this one. Kurama raised her voice in alarm, actually afraid for her container's well-being. She didn't get a chance to say any more when Naruto chomped down on whatever it was on the chopsticks. The effects were immediate. With a loud gurgle, his eyes rolled up into his head as he fell backward in his chair, crashing onto the floor like a rag doll. He went into a brief seizure before becoming very still, his eyes still completely white with froth coming out of his open mouth. Hinata, having watched all of this up close, sat in silence for a moment before she finally realized what just happened. Naruto-kun, Naruto. Both females cried at the same time as Hinata rushed to his side. Elsewhere in a certain Hyuga residence, Hiyashi's stomach growled as he read some reports at his desk. He had elected to skip dinner for the sake of his own safety. As soon as he saw the result of his daughter's cooking, he immediately went into full retreat and, with his best possible Hyuga composure, lied through his damn teeth that he wasn't hungry and suggested a poor victim in Naruto. He felt his nose twitching a little. Uzumaki-san must be thinking about how to get back at me, he mused inwardly and smirked a little. 5 months later at the 42nd. After spending a week in the hospital thanks to Hinata's unique cooking, Naruto had to waste another week getting his body back into peak condition before he could wear the training weights. At first, he began with 40 pounds. It took him 2 months to get used to the extra weight. He finally was able to complete 10 round trips in a row to the bottom of the ravine and back up, under the usual 10 minutes limit each time. After that, Kurama ordered him to put 20 more pounds on until he got used to the weight and then repeat. The last 3 months were spent getting him up to the total weight of 100 pounds. Meanwhile, he worked on the Raging Fox kata extensively. He quickly became proficient with the style, which truly impressed Kurama, who kept piling on harsher training with even more apparitions in Naruto's mindscape. The boy did not falter or complain once. It was also discovered over the months of training that he could learn jutsu and train his chakra control in his mindscape as well as on the outside. Muscles didn't limit chakra and its control, so any knowledge Naruto gained in his mind added up to the real-world applications. Kurama and Naruto quickly made use of that fortunate development, with him already learning the leaf-holding exercise, tree walking, and was now mastering water walking in his spare time. He also began working on Kawarimi and Henge. At this rate, he would be able to use them without seals before his academy years ended. Kurama and Naruto were also pleasantly surprised to discover that, thanks to the fox's unique chakra, the boy was able to form a solid henge compared to the usual illusion usually cast instead. Only anyone with the Byakugan or Sharingan could see through it due to the blonde's chakra signature, and only the most experienced shinobi would be able to find the few missing details on the henged form, if there were anything off in the first place. Naruto was excited about the notion of being a super spy able to go behind the enemy line at will. The fox was more pleased about the possible pranks and bloodbaths her container could induce in the future. However, she made an unusual request of Naruto. Back to that conversation, what? You want me to keep this quiet from Hokage Gigi? The blonde boy blurted out loud as he almost tripped on a tree branch. He had to recover quickly before continuing jumping through the trees toward their usual training ground. They had just finished a successful test run with the solid henge. Naruto used it to transform himself as a plain 20-something man and walked everywhere in the village, especially in full view of as many shinobi as he could find. He even lost his 2 Anbu guards following him at the very beginning. Only 2 Hyugas seemed to notice him when they happened to have their Byakugan activated both times. Naruto was frustrated to discover that, with a simple henge, everyone greeted and acknowledged him warmly wherever he went. The difference in treatment toward the blonde pariah and a regular everyday man was extremely jarring. Pushing that out of his mind, he was planning on telling the Hokage of this discovery when Kurama redirected him toward the training ground and made the request. I know what you're going to say, and I understand the great potential this has as a spying tool. However, just think about this for a minute and you will see that this is detrimental to your own personal goals. And mine as well. The fox alluded to something that she knew Naruto wouldn't agree with. Okay, so let's focus on the obvious benefits. I can go pretty much anywhere I want without enemies noticing if I'm careful. The higher-ups would love the potential for this in spying. It has limited uses in fights and on the battlefield, though. Naruto had to admit he couldn't think much use for the henge in a fight. If he could spy like this all the time, even his surrogate grandfather would have no choice but to send him out on long-term spying missions to make full use of this once-in-a-lifetime potential. Realization hit him quickly. I see you caught on, boy. I believe when the old fart reports your modified henge to the council as part of his job, they will most likely debate having you sent out on long missions. I wouldn't be surprised if they train you now and ship you out within the year. You will only be here in the village a handful of times for the rest of your shinobi career and would be unable to protect your friends if there were trouble. Plus, you will not be able to train as much under henge, and reaching your full potential will be much harder, maybe even impossible. Kurama broke down the cons for her container, who frowned. On one hand, he wanted to help his village as much as he could, but, on the other, his personal goals of being a powerful frontline shinobi conflicted with that. In the end, it was an easy decision for him as he reached the ground. He would keep the modified henge to himself and use it only when he needed to. Present. Naruto was seen hoisting himself over the edge of the ravine onto solid ground easily, as if the extra 100 pounds he was wearing weighted nothing. He let out a tired sigh as he wiped sweat and dirt from his forehead. That was the 10th time in a row, Kurama. I don't know how, but I also beat my best time even when I'm wearing all of this. He had to admit it almost scared him how much he grew so fast. His body did not look like a normal child's now. He grew a little taller, putting him at the same height as Shikamaru, currently the tallest of his friends. Lean and powerful muscles could be seen everywhere on his body, yet he still looked agile and slim. Good job, Naruto. We'll keep the weight the same for a while until you grow some more. For now, just do this twice as a daily routine. Better to just let your body gradually grow used to this level instead of constantly stressing it with more weight. As I said before, your ultimate goal is to be able to move with 3 times your fully grown body's weight on you as if it was nothing. You would be very dangerous without the weight on, and even more deadly when you start drawing on my chakra. Kurama stated matter-of-factly before continuing. Take the weights off and go down the ravine and back up as fast as you can. See if you can't do this in under a minute. Naruto's eye twitched at his tenant's challenge. He quickly stripped the weights off and stretched to get a feel for his new and improved body. He did not get to make use of his body's full strength in any meaningful way. He also had to practice the katas that he learned in the mindscape with the weights on, and Kurama ordered him to not use full strength if he could help it the rest of the time. For one Uzumaki Naruto, this would be the first time he got to truly use his body in months. In the forest leading to the 42nd training ground, a small indigo-haired girl with pale eyes could be seen pushing through some bushes in the dense forest. Hyuga Hinata was slowly making her way toward the clearing where her friend Naruto was training, and she was carrying an oversized bento. She knew her friend was out there training again and that he wouldn't have any lunch with him as usual. After that unfortunate incident with her first bento 5 months ago, she felt so responsible and guilty even with Naruto's reassurances. She then strove to improve her cooking as quickly as possible and, soon afterward, she was able to make decent meals. Hanabi now made requests for their lunches together and she enjoyed anything her older sister cooked so far. Even their stoic father seemed to be visibly looking forward to whatever meal Hinata made these days now. When she found out from Naruto that he was training out here, she decided to make a bento lunch for him once or twice every week. The first time she showed up in front of Naruto with the lunch, she was stunned when he immediately took the box and dug in. Even though she knew she improved, she thought Naruto would be wary of her cooking after the last time, but he just ate it all without any hesitation. It was at that moment she became very happy and was nearly fainting from overjoy when he yelled, "It's so good!" to the entire world in the clearing. Even now, her heart still raced whenever he smiled brightly at the sight of her approaching with lunch for him. Shaking out of her thoughts, she saw she was getting close to the clearing, and decided to use her Byakugan to check if it was okay for her to get closer. After searching a little, she noticed Naruto standing at the edge of the ravine with her zoomed-in vision. She smiled as she watched him begin to strip off the weights he was wearing and stretched. She figured he was finished with that dangerous exercise. She always was apprehensive when she watched him training, thinking this could hurt or even kill him at any moment. She frowned when she watched Naruto walk back up to the very edge of the ravine. Her eyes then widened in surprise as she gasped when Naruto suddenly jumped up into the air and seemed to be diving into the ravine. Her body broke into a run before she even realized it and she was panting in panic as she burst onto the clearing, making a beeline for where Naruto jumped off. Somehow she held on to the bento she was holding through all of this. As she was about to reach the ravine, she yelped in shock and fell back onto her backside when a yellow blur jumped up high into the air from the ravine. She craned her neck to see what it was and almost broke into tears of relief when she saw it was Naruto as he did an acrobatic flip in the air before landing gently on the ground facing away from her. Wow! I got to the bottom and back up here in less than a minute. That's amazing, he yelled loudly to no one in particular, not noticing that Hinata was still on her backside behind him staring at the jubilant blonde in shock. It was a few more long seconds before he finally smelled lavender in the air and knew that scent to be Hinata's shampoo. He stopped celebrating and took a glance around to finally notice his friend sitting on the ground behind him in dumbfounded shock, her white eyes and light pink lips trembling. It took him a moment to understand exactly what could have happened. He assumed he probably scared her badly and hoped to play it off as he sheepishly scratched the back of his head. Sorry, he tried before a crying brunette tackled him to the ground hard. Don't do that. That scared me to death, she tried to angrily say, but she was just too relieved to see her friend all right. She let herself cry for a moment on Naruto's chest as he guiltily patted her on her back. She finally sat up, straddling his torso as he laid flat on the ground. What dangerous thing were you doing just now? She almost growled with a frown as she looked down at the still sheepish Naruto. Hinata's usual stutter had all but disappeared in the time she spent with Naruto and her new friends. Now she would only stutter when she was extremely nervous. To say her father was slightly ecstatic about Naruto's effects on Hinata would be to say Senju Tsunade had a slight gambling problem. Even if he didn't show it. I was finally allowed to take the weights off. I decided to give what I could do at full power a try. I climbed down to the bottom and back up in under 1 minute. I can't believe how fast I did that. Naruto exclaimed with an excited smile. Hinata had to smile at his attitude about all of this. She wondered just how much stronger he was going to be even just 10 years from now on. One half of her liked, even found it very attractive, that he could be very powerful. The other half just dreaded it, since it would mean he'd likely attract attention from enemies. She feared for his safety in the future. Hinata-chan. Naruto's gentle voice broke the brunette out of her thoughts. Sorry, but if you don't mind, can you get off? I can't move. He tried to ask delicately. It took the Hyuga heiress a second to realize she was still straddling her friend, and jumped off with a blush. Sorry about that. I forgot. She mumbled in embarrassment, her stutter coming back briefly. Naruto simply diffused any awkwardness when he got up and made a beeline for the bento sitting on the ground nearby. He then earnestly began eating his lunch, and Hinata joined in with a happy smile a moment later. As she was eating her half of the lunch, she noticed that her friend seemed to be staring at her somewhat. She began to blush and wondered what he was thinking. Naruto-kun, is there a reason why you are staring at me? She timidly asked as she stared down at her bento, too shy to meet Naruto's steady gaze. She heard him chuckle slightly and knew he was doing his usual sheepish gesture. Sorry about that, Hinata-chan. I've seen all the other female Hyugas and you're the only one with short hair. I was just thinking how you'd look with long hair and I think it's easy to imagine you like that. You'd look great, I'm sure. Naruto honestly said as he went back to eating his portion of the lunch. Hinata's blush intensified as she wondered if he preferred long-haired girls. Truth be told, she thought about growing her hair out some and she now felt more reassured that Naruto could imagine her with a style like that. A few more minutes of silence followed before Hinata finally decided to try to satisfy her curiosity. Anyo, I was just wondering who your sensei is. I have never seen anyone else other than just you working out here alone. This person must be amazing to make you so much stronger than before in just 6 months. She asked with some nervousness, afraid she might be prying. Naruto looked up from his lunch and allowed an embarrassed smile at her compliment. Sorry, it's kind of a secret. There's a reason for that and a kid like me actually isn't even supposed to be here. It was only because of Hokage Gigi and my special circumstances that I was given permission to train. He apologetically said and felt very guilty at seeing Hinata's expression change to one of sadness. It felt like kicking a small puppy to him. I see. She dejectedly muttered as she looked down at her lunch with a downcast expression, her curiosity once again prolonged. Hinata-chan, it's not that I don't trust you, but Hokage Gigi asked me to make sure information about me didn't come easily to anyone, even my friends. It's S-ranked after all. You'll find out everything about me in time, I'm sure. Just be patient and you'll get all your answers. Naruto sincerely assured with a sad smile. Hinata felt a little better and nodded slightly. After a long moment of silence, she spoke up. Anyo, father was saying he would like to see you and see how you're doing. Hanabi-chan has been asking the same, too. It's been a few weeks since you came by our place, so how about I make dinner and you come over tonight, she offered. Naruto allowed his usual bright smile and nodded. Is there anything specific you'd like? She inquired, wanting to make whatever Naruto was in the mood for. The blonde had to take a moment and think, before inspiration struck him. He barely managed to hide his mischievous smile as he made his request. Hinata brightened up at the fact she would have an easy time making this dish and make it as delicious as she could, but she'd make sure. Are you sure, Naruto-kun? I could do something more complicated. That's what I'm in the mood for, Hinata-chan. I'm sure your family would absolutely love this too. Naruto assured, his lips almost twitching at what he was planning. The rest of the lunch was spent in comfortable silence before Hinata excused herself since she had to go back for her own training. Naruto sent her off with a wave and a smile, now standing alone in the clearing. You know as well I do she wouldn't care about the great and terrible Kyuubi being sealed into you. In fact, it would answer most, if not all, of the questions she must have had since meeting you, and it'd help her understand why you're hated. I dare say she would stand even more firmly at your side to help you deal with the ignorant fools that wish for your death. Kurama suddenly spoke up, offering her view on this. That last part is exactly why I'm not feeling great about telling her. That'd mean she'll have to deal with hatred of her own for being closely associated with the demon brat. She's already dealing with her clan, and she doesn't need the whole village after her too. I can't stand that kind of thought. It probably didn't help that I've been pranking the entire village all this time too, making my reputation worse. Kurama just shrugged, deciding she'd just leave this up to the boy's discretion. Later tonight at the Hyuga main house, Hiyashi's left eye twitched as he had on a very stony expression, trying not to betray his displeasure at this development to those around him. In front of him on the dining table sat a plate. It was a very simple entree, and he was sure that Hinata cooked this very well with her developing but already excellent cooking skills. Everyone else at the table would eat this and call it great tasting, all except for him. Hiyashi's eye twitched again as he stared down at the abomination on the plate with barely restrained contempt. The entree combined two things he disliked the most, cheese and eggs, into one to make a large and cheesy omelet with rice on the side. Naruto's eyes caught Hiyashi's slight contempt for his dinner and had to hold back a smile, victorious that the information he painstakingly sweet-talked out of Tomo were correct. He'd enjoy watching this. Hinata had just finished setting the plates down for Naruto and Hanabi sitting to Hiyashi's left at the large table before she sat down between her father and Naruto. The blonde was chatting quietly with Hanabi about what she had began to learn in her recent lessons with the gentle fist. Hiyashi hated having to do this, but he would pretend that he forgot he ate earlier and was still feeling full. He hoped to get out of eating this abomination. Unfortunately for the Hyuga clan head, Naruto seemed to have excellent timing. Oh, Hinata-chan, this looks so good. I can tell your dad's going to love this, and I bet he's really hungry too. I haven't seen him eat anything since I got here long ago, Naruto exclaimed innocently to Hinata's reddening face, though Hiyashi swore he saw a ghost of a mischievous smirk on the boy's lips. His eye twitched again at the boy's rather convenient statement. He wondered if the boy planned this. It shouldn't have been possible though, since very few knew of his immense dislike for eggs and cheese. Any thought of getting out of this disappeared when Hinata's expression slowly lit up with innocent expectation as she stared at her father. He almost sighed in defeat as he gently clapped his hands together and anusined, "Itadakimasu," to officially begin the dinner. The sisters and Naruto immediately dug in, and Hiyashi was stalling for time as he slowly picked the chopsticks up. While Naruto ate, he was discreetly keeping an eye on Hiyashi's face for his expressions. Hiyashi caught this and realization came to him as he frowned slightly at the boy who gave a barely visible grin. "You little bastard, you took your time getting back at me for the incident with Hinata's first bento." He had to admit he wasn't expecting this and almost allowed a smirk at the boy's deviousness. He was caught in this with Hinata's expectant eyes boring into him for his approval and Naruto ready to cut any escape route off with his timely, innocent comments. "I'll have to graciously accept defeat," Hiyashi determined as he slowly began to take his bites, making sure to nod his approval to Hinata. He was able to feel himself turn green underneath his stony demeanor and barely held his gag reflex back. It was a long and tortuous 15 minutes, made worse by Naruto's hidden smirk that only Hiyashi saw. When it was done, the clan head sat very still, afraid to move lest he might do something unsightly in front of his daughters. It will not do to have them see their father in a less than stellar light. Hinata and Hanabi were beginning to get concerned about their father's non-response to anything when Naruto decided to spare his host any further discomfort. "Oi, how about we play a couple games in one of your rooms," he suggested. Hiyashi was relieved at the prankster's surprising kindness as the girls nodded. The kids then all got up to head into another room. As soon as they left, Hiyashi quickly stood and briskly walked to the nearest bathroom, almost knocking over a hallway table on the way. Later outside the compound that was hilarious watching Hiyashi as he sat through the entire dinner trying to keep his composure. I almost lost it when his skin took on a slightly green hue. Naruto giggled as he walked down the usual path toward his apartment. "I like pranks as much as you do and that was good planning, but please do be careful not to piss the clan head off too much," Kurama said with a slightly exasperated smirk. "I know, no worries there. Putting that aside, come into the mindscape tonight. After we finish practicing the kata, it's time we discuss the kenjutsu style you want to learn. You'll practice that along with your taijutsu. Eventually we'll have to ask the old fart for some practice weapons, depending on what you want to learn." Naruto grinned wide in excitement as he continued walking into the darkness of night as he imagined himself with different random weapons, wondering which would be the best fit for him. I've made a major addition to the discussion between Kurama and Naruto in the mindscape scene. I realized that I've never really touched on the Uzumaki clan in this story so far, yet I have Naruto acting like he knew some details about it later in the story. This part will now explain why he knew so much. Other than that, just mostly improved grammar and dialogue flow as usual. There'll be some changes for chapter 7 tomorrow. Thanks for listening. I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like for more what ifs and support the author. See you guys in the next video.